Well, welcome everyone. I can't see your faces, but I'm so glad you're here, and I'm excited to get to talk to you guys today. I love Tin Man. I've loved being a part of the Tin Man company now for a little more than a few years, both as a client needing a Tin Man coach, but then also bringing in my skill set of functional medicine health coaching. So I'm excited to kind of share with you guys what I do, how I work with clients, and how our work really complements each other's. And so I will take questions at the end. And so, yep, if he already said that, I missed it, but just feel free to put them in the chat box and I will address as many as I can at the end. So just about me, I'm married to Ford Tixon. He is a physician assistant in the U.S. Navy. So we are currently in California, but we've been in San Antonio and North Carolina, and we have three girls. That we've got Ember. She's the big one holding the baby. She's almost 6, and Selah is 3.5, and then Kennedy is 5 months old and a day. So we have our hands full, but it's so fun. This is what I'm doing most of the time. And then I get to dabble in functional medicine currently. So my story with functional medicine probably is a lot of y'all's that are coaches and even in other professions. Just you get into something because you needed it. And so I was a athlete in high school and college, but I had chronic digestive issues. I would say like mild, sometimes moderate, starting in childhood, really, and acne really since like preteen years and on, even into my 30s, and just would have bloating, gas, constipation, other little signs of inflammation. And in grad school, started experiencing more hair loss than I thought was normal. And I was like, man, I am healthy. I've studied, exercise and nutrition. I take what I think is good care of my body, like what's going on, and was pretty frustrated with just the care I was getting from my primary care and then dermatologists and other physicians. And so in my head, I was thinking, like, gosh, these things probably are connected some way, but no one seems to be explaining to me why they're happening. They might give like well, it's probably just you're stressed, but without taking any time to understand my life story, where I was at in that season, they just kind of put a blanket on it and then passed me a pill. And I was pretty tired of that after 10 years of really trying to make some improvement in these areas. And that's when a friend introduced me to Dr. Dawn DeSilvia. She's the one on the left. And she said, why don't you try her? She's different. And it was such a breath of fresh air getting to talk with this doctor. She had more of the functional medicine approach and took an hour with me in our first visit, which is not what our conventional system has set up. And so, working outside that system, I got a lot of time with her. She took time to understand my story and what was going on. And it just gave some hope that, oh, there's a different way to approach what's going on. She does have some good answers and suggestions. And I just started consuming as much content on functional medicine as I could. And she gave me some great pointers, and she really launched me in this direction. I already had a background in exercise and nutrition that I'll talk about in a minute, but I said, man, I would love to coach for someone like you. And she was like, oh, you have the great background. You can just do a lot of self-teaching and, there's certifications down the line. But she really, one, helped change the direction of how I addressed my health and to my career. And then when my husband got into PA school in Arkansas, I met Dr. Amy Beard. She's the one on the right, and I've been working with her since 2017. And I currently work with her in addition to with Tin Man, and work more in a team setting where a client will see a physician and then be passed to me, and I work alongside them as their coach. On the right side of my screen here, you can see the diagram called the functional medicine tree. And I like to show this with all my new clients, but this is a great example of kind of how functional medicine works as compared to conventional medicine, because it's really just an approach to how you're treating a client. So, if the tree is the top, the branches and the leaves are kind of the top of the tree, that's where we would see conventional medicine kind of living most of the time. right? You have a sign or a symptom, and your PCP might say, great, here's a referral for this person for that, and for this person for that. And those particular specialists are going to try and find a diagnosis for what you have and then give you a pill or a procedure to address it. A really great physician might give you some ideas on how to work on your lifestyle in 12.2 minutes or something like that, right? They don't have the time built in to really walk alongside you to make the changes that are needed to have a healthy tree. What we do in functional medicine is we go a step deeper and we go down into the trunk next, and we think, okay, you've got these signs and symptoms going on. What are the imbalances happening in the body? Is there some dysfunction in the gut, which we're going to talk about in a little bit? Is there some toxicity going on? Are you fatigued and brain fogged because your mitochondria are just overburdened with toxins from various inputs? Are you having some hormonal imbalances, and why? Because typically the hormones, which hormones are out of balance, but then why are those getting out of balance? What's the dysfunction underneath that even? So we like to kind of help clients understand, this is what we think those underlying imbalances are. And we can get a good indicator of what that is based on someone's detailed story and history and their current symptoms. And then sometimes we also will throw in labs, standard labs, specialty labs. Those could be used as well. But we don't stop there, right? So you've got some imbalances going on. We see that, but we want to go even deeper into the tree. And this is really where health coaches live most of the time, which is in the roots, right? What has caused those imbalances to occur in the body? How is your sleep and relaxation? Or are you burning the candle at both ends? How's your exercise and movement? Are you doing too much for the season that you're in and the stress that you have? Or are you not doing enough? We could talk about different stressors, toxins, relationships, past trauma, microorganisms, again, gut function or other parts of the microbiome, environmental toxins. All those things are the roots of the tree, and they filter through someone's mental and emotional and spiritual health, their genetics, their experiences and their attitudes, right? Those things are also kind of noted as the coach is working with the client so that we can help optimize the root system of the tree and therefore impact everything else. So just a little background on me, and then we're going to dive into more of what functional medicine is. I started at Pepperdine University. I got my bachelor's in sports medicine. And then, a lot of you may be out in the Nashville area. I went to Lipscomb for grad school, and it was just so fun. It was right before Nashville, I would say, really exploded, and I loved my time there. And then I worked with Dr. Amy Beard for a bit, and so maybe a few years after that, got certified in functional medicine through the Functional Medicine Health Coaching Academy. And that's really the sister program to the Institute of Functional Medicine, which is the body that certifies practitioners. And so that way, Dr. Beard is a certified practitioner and I'm a certified coach, and we've been trained on all the same materials and a lot of the same teachers. So that's where my background comes in. I love this quote. It is more important to know what sort of person has a disease than to know what sort of disease a person has. And again, that's really a core tenet of functional medicine, is really getting to know who this person is, how they got to where they are, and what kind of plan they need to improve, because the plan's not going to look the same for every single person. We really want, especially as a coach, I want to make sure that you're crafting a lifestyle that you love and not just doing XYZ because I said so. So specifically, what is functional medicine? It's an approach to medicine. It's not a specialty. So really any specialist could use a functional medicine approach. While we might think of maybe family med as kind of the most obvious, you could use a functional medicine approach to any kind of subcategory, if you will. It's going to focus on how and why illness occurs and restore health by addressing the root causes for each individual. That's going to require a detailed understanding of that patient's genetic, biochemical, and lifestyle factors. So again, taking that time up front to get to know the client is really important then in understanding what they need moving forward. And then we use personalized treatment plans to lead to improve patient outcomes. So what I do when I meet with clients, one, I help them investigate the root causes, and we're going to go into that a little bit more, but that can include toxins, allergens, microbes, poor diet, movement, stress. Those are the things I'm looking at. What insults have occurred over time, and how can we start to heal them? And then I do a lot of educating on helping clients understand underlying imbalances on what's going on in their body. We're going to talk a lot about gut health and hormone balance today, so you guys can get a taste of that. But I also talk a lot about how your immune system functions and your energy regulation and your toxicity and detoxification processes. And I think that's really valuable because, again, with my work with Dr. DeSilvia, it was a great experience. Again, really pivoted how I look at my health and my career. But she was expensive, and most practitioners are. And that's where a coach can really come in and provide and just have more time with a client to provide that education and the long-term changes that we want to see. I also help clients develop and implement their personalized plan. So once I get to know them and help them understand what's going on, we work together to come up with, okay, this is the plan we're going to work on for the first 3 months. And then we kind of go from there on other things we might address later on. And then I can also walk clients through physician design protocols if a more aggressive approach is needed. So, as my example, I've worked with Dr. Beard for years now, and she has several protocols that are kind of available to the public. So, if that's kind of a route that a client may need, a little more aggressive approach, I'm able to kind of hold their hand as they walk through those protocols, which can be really helpful because as you're trying to address your health, no one wants to use Dr. Google to really figure out everything on their own. It's helpful to have someone who's done it before and you can answer their questions and kind of give them guidance on what they particularly need. So investigating root causes, like what does that mean? How do I do that? One, I start with comprehensive new client forms, which is not everyone's favorite, but is extremely helpful. And I review every answer with my clients, really getting to know the timeline of their health from when they were born, how they were born, vaginal, C-section. That already impacts their gut microbiome from a young age. Did they eat a lot of candy as a kid? Were there any major traumas as a kid? We go all the way back and kind of look up through what were the pivotal moments in their health and how did they change over the years. And then once I get those forms and I've reviewed them, typically I will meet with a client for 1 hour and I'm asking more questions to dive into that client history and understand their health timeline. And I'm identifying antecedents. So again, how were they born? Were they bottle fed, breastfed? We know now, like those things very much impact how your gut microbiome is set up. And it can be altered and changed. There's hope. If you feel like, oh, I started out really rough, those things can be grown and changed, but it's good for me to know where did we start and what were the things, to use the metaphor, like your health was a bucket. What were the things that went into the bucket over time? And what was it that tipped the bucket over and everything spilled out? And so we take the time to identify what are those pieces along the health timeline, what spilled out of the bucket, and so that we can figure out how are we going to address this mess, if you will. How are we going to address the different symptoms that are popping up right now? And then I am able to help clients order blood work and/or specialty labs if those are needed. And some of those can provide some insight on, and then at times we'll refer to a practitioner if we need practitioner's eyes on all of those things. All right. And then, after we kind of investigate those root causes, I'm looking at helping the client understand the underlying imbalances. I would say most of my clients say, I really like to understand at least the basics of why we're doing this because it motivates me. And so I do like to spend a lot of time helping clients kind of wrap their head around this is what's going on in your body and this is how we're going to change it. And so today I want to give you a taste of that because I think once you kind of get it, your eyes opened a little bit to a different approach to understanding inflammation in the body and how that drives chronic symptoms, I think it gets really fun and people get motivated to make some of the maybe hard changes that they weren't willing to. And hopefully for those of you that are coaches, you'll kind of get a taste of how some of your clients might be able to benefit from this sort of approach. So we'll talk specifically about gut health and hormone balance today. Again, another quote from Hippocrates, but all disease begins in the gut. Why would he say that? Well, let's take a look. I think when I talk about gut health now, I think people are a little bit more receptive to it in the past few years. There's been more chatter about how important the gut is and probiotics and all those things. But even 5 to 7 years ago, I'd have clients who knew nothing about gut health. So there's kind of a spectrum. So some of you, this may be like, yeah, I knew a little bit of this, but hopefully I'll teach you something new. So the gut microbiota is encompassed by hundreds of trillions of bacteria and other microorganisms, and they play a very unique role in gut functioning and really whole body functioning. They can weigh up to 1 to 2 kilograms in your body, and they're important because your GI tract reaches the surface of it reaches the size of 2 tennis courts. So you have more surface of gut lining than you have of skin on your body. It really is your greatest interface with the outside world, which is why it's a hub for your immune system, because your immune system knows, hey, most of the insults that might be coming into our body are going to come from the gut, right? So gut health and immune system function are very closely tied together. 95% of your own, there you go, bacteria are located in the GI tract. And I could see that number changes down to 70%, up to 95. Different people will estimate different amounts. But you've got a lot of bacteria, right? 10 to 1, your microbes outnumber your human cells. So we are mostly our bacteria. So I hope that's helping you understand, like, these guys are important. Their function is important. And there's two major reasons that gut can be so foundational to health, in addition to just like the amount of bacteria we have. But your gut is connected to multiple body systems because of the functions that all that bacteria has in your microbiome. And we'll go into those functions in just a second. And then part 2, like I mentioned, the gut is the major hub for your immune system. And so if you want to have a healthy immune system, you've got to have a healthy gut. What does your gut microbiome do? Lots of things. This is just a taste. Boosts immunity, assists with immune balance, maintains proper hormonal balance, and produces a major fuel source for your colon cells. It's your first place of detoxification. It's going to neutralize and kill off harmful pathogens that you might ingest. It makes vitamins. It influences your metabolism. It affects the way you absorb nutrients. It impacts the way you store fat. It impacts how you produce insulin. The list goes on and on. One thing I like to point out, especially when we're talking about mental and emotional health, is that there is a huge connection between your gut and your brain. And there's actually more messages. You may have heard people say your gut is your second brain, but some scientists would say actually your gut is your first brain. You really have more messages going from your gut to your brain than the other way around. So there's a lot of information being pushed from your gut to other parts of your body. So it definitely impacts mental health, emotional health, and then also other things. It's going to impact your thyroid health. It's going to impact your heart health, and so on and so on. So the two main imbalances that can occur in the gut that I'm looking for, and many of my clients, probably most, have a degree of some of these going on. And so we'll work to repair that. And I'll talk to you about how we do that. But the two things that can go on in the gut: 1, dysbiosis, and 2, leaky gut. Those are the main ones. So dysbiosis is just our general term for when your microbial balance is off. So it's an imbalance of yeast and bacteria, and it could be that some of the bad kinds are overgrowing. It could be that you may have too little of some really good species. So it's a general term for any of those. And of course, you can do a stool study to test exactly what's going on in the gut. Those are unfortunately not super affordable. They're not super cheap, I should say. They're $300 to $400 to do them. But the good news is, like, looking at symptoms, looking at what's going on in the gut, looking at bowel movements, you can get a pretty good idea if this is present. And there's a lot of great simple things you can do to help reverse this without having to go down the route of a stool study for most people. Leaky gut. What is leaky gut? It really is kind of what it sounds like, but there in your gut, you have these beautiful cells up on the top of this diagram that have tight junctions and are fit together. And this allows for proper absorption of nutrients and keeps the toxins and proteins that are not digested fully out, because we don't want them entering the bloodstream until they are fully, those proteins are fully digested, and we don't want toxins just leaking through. But when you have inflammation in the gut, or you have other insults to the gut lining, the cells are not as healthy, or the inflammation actually causes those cells to swell, and you create like looseness in between the cells. Those tight junctions are no longer tight and they become leaky. And you can see right on the other side, you've got the bloodstream. And like we talked about, you've got the majority of your immune system waiting for invaders. And so if you've got a leaky gut and you've got invaders coming through that leaky gut, the immune system is going to be activated. And you may experience digestive issues with that, but you may not, because the inflammation doesn't just stay in the gut, it goes everywhere. So someone with leaky gut could have chronic kind of constipation and then a few days a month diarrhea, or they might have bloating like pretty regularly. But someone else with leaky gut may feel like their digestion is fine, but they've developed hypothyroidism, or they've got joint pain, right? That inflammation could go anywhere, and it really just becomes kind of your unique genetics and what's going on in your life that determines what symptoms flare. But a lot of the time, leaky gut can be a big source of inflammation for quite a few people. So we want to make sure that gut is happy. And again, this reiterates what I said. Since so much of your immune system is lying on the other side of your gut, that's going to drive inflammation if we're allowing things through that shouldn't be coming through. And people with leaky gut develop weight gain, joint pain, eczema, asthma, chronic sinus infections, depression, brain fog, etc. Chronic inflammatory symptom could be tied back to leaky gut. So what causes leaky gut, or the scientific term would be intestinal permeability and dysbiosis? Could be a poor diet, inflammatory diet, processed kind of foods, frequently used, stressors, any kind of stressor, whether that's a psychological stressor or other, infections, parasites, certain medications cause intestinal permeability. A systemic disease that's putting stress on the body can kind of create a cycle of, a certain disease can then cause leaky gut to get worse. Nutrient insufficiencies, if the gut doesn't have what it needs, mold and environmental toxins and trauma. And then when you've got that altered intestinal permeability, we've got food allergies developing. You might notice you're more sensitive to foods, poor absorption of your current food. So even though you may be eating healthy, you might not be getting all the nutrients from your food that you should be. Your immune system's going to be activated. You might be getting sick more often than you normally would. Your toxic load is going to increase. Again, your body's letting in more toxins than it should be. And all of those things elevate your body's total toxic burden and antigenic burden. And so then we might end up with some chronic symptoms or disease. Real quick, because many of my clients come in on some of these medications, one or some, or have had to use them in the past. All of these very much impact gut health. So for yourself, for your family, for your clients, as you're thinking about, these medications should not be taken lightly. Stomach acid reducing medications, you need stomach acid to digest your food well. If you're not digesting your food well, you're going to cause problems, dysbiosis, leaky gut downstream. So if someone's having heartburn, there are better ways to address it than with a stomach acid reducing medication. So I work with clients a lot if they're dealing with heartburn, if they've used these or are currently using these, to help them get to where they don't need them anymore. NSAID, so your ibuprofen, Aleve, aspirin. This is a gnarly cycle, because you might take an NSAID for joint pain that just kind of keeps creeping up on you and you're taking it regularly, but NSAIDs will cause intestinal permeability if used chronically or in large doses. And chronically could be small doses over time. And so then you're contributing to a leaky gut, which is contributing to inflammation, which is contributing to joint pain. So it's a cycle that you really don't want to get in. Again, we want to look at what's driving inflammation, causing the joints to hurt, and let's reverse it so we don't need these medications and get stuck in the cycle. Antibiotics, I think more people are very much aware. We don't want to take those lightly. They're great when you absolutely need them, but there's a lot of things that we have used them for that maybe we don't need to. So to be very thoughtful on how you're using those. And I was prescribed for my acne antibiotics on and off during kind of the 10 years I was working with a conventional dermatologist on my skin. And that definitely played not a helpful role in rebalancing my gut and helping make sure that my gut was healthy so that my skin was healthy and reflected that. Birth control can also impact gut health. That can be, kind of a hard or touchy subject for some people, but I do like to provide just education on that for clients that need that. And any medication really that is listing diarrhea and or constipation as a side effect may impact the gut in some way. So things to be thoughtful about. And I really like to help provide patients a lot of like encouragement and education on what they could do instead to get to the root cause of what's going on. And if possible, my goal is that my clients are on the least amount of medications and supplements as they really need to stay healthy, that they're maintaining health with a lifestyle approach as much as possible. So for healing the gut, there's 5 things that we like to do when I'm helping clients. And this could be done as a full gut health protocol, or we can do most of this like lifestyle related with food and maybe a supplement here or there. But number 1, we're going to remove stressors. So if there's infection, we need to treat that. If there's stress going on, we need to address it. Medications, we might need to adjust or remove if possible. Food sensitivities, we're going to figure out what those are and we're going to address them. And then excess sugar, carbohydrates, processed foods. And we're going to replace digestive enzymes and secretions. That's upstream in your GI tract, right? We want to make sure right from the get-go you have the enzymes and stomach acid you need to digest your food well so that as it moves through the digestive tract, it's going to be absorbed well. It's not going to damage any part of the small intestine and so on. Then we like to re-inoculate the microbiome. So that's where probiotics come in, but could also be fermented foods. And then prebiotics, which is kind of the fertilizer for the good bugs, would come from fiber or supplements as well. And then repairing the gut lining, making sure that client has the right nutrients for restoring their gut. Are they taking a good high quality multivitamin, at least in a partial dose? Omega-3s, L-glutamine, bone broth, etc. There's different ways we can really help support that gut lining. And rebalance. And the 12 fundamentals are something Dr. Beard talks about and we talk about in our practice, but basically those are just the main lifestyle habits that we should be having to at least some degree in place in our lives. And that can range from diet to connection, to movement, to sleep, to stress management. We need to be making sure that we're doing those things. So GI microbiome musts. I'm helping clients clean up their diet, clean up their environment, exercise in moderation, manage their stress, get adequate sleep, right? We talk about all of these things because all of them do impact how your gut's functioning, and the way your gut functions impacts the rest of your body. So this can feel overwhelming. Just cleaning up diet alone can feel like there's so much information out there. How do I get started? I might have some ideas, but it's hard to do, and it can be tricky on figuring out which diet is right for me. Should I do something that's a little more trendy right now, and all of those things. So having a coach to come alongside can be really helpful, and having clarity of like, this is kind of what we're going to do. This is the diet plan I want you to implement. Or these are just the first simple changes we're going to make, right? It depends on the client and how aggressive they want to start. And then that's kind of how I go from there with them. All right, we're going to pivot here and talk about your body's response to stress. And I'm really excited to get to spend a few minutes here with you because I think this is really where we start to overlap. I mean, the gut, you can't ignore the gut, right? The gut is so important to health, and it's a huge portion of what I do and address with clients. And wanted you guys to have some background there as to how it might be helpful for people. But where we really overlap and where Tin Man, I think, brings such value is because people are burning the candle at both ends. They are living in their sympathetic nervous system in that fight or flight mode or freeze, or if they're fawning, whatever it may be. And their body is starting to say, this is too much. And that's typically when they show up to me and say, like, my body, I don't know what's going on. I need some help. The doctor can't explain it. My labs are quote unquote normal, or they're not, but I'm just getting a pill and I don't want just a pill. So um, this is where I think our work together goes well, and I'll tie it in. But from my perspective, when we say HPA axis, we're talking about the body's response to stress and how that can get imbalanced over time. You might have heard the term adrenal fatigue or adrenal dysfunction. That would be the same thing. Just the more accurate clinical term is HPA axis, because we're talking about the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal glands. And those glands, the first two in the brain and your adrenals sit on your kidneys, those release neurotransmitters and hormones that tell your body, hey, there's a stressor, it's time to respond. If we're chronically pushing those things out, our body eventually it'll try and keep up, and it'll push, 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 and then it will say too much, and it will start to go the opposite direction and underproduce. Why is this so important? Not just because it's stress on our bodies, but because it impacts all of your other hormones, right? So there's a hormone hierarchy. The bottom ones are foundational for your health and for all the rest of your hormones to be healthy. So a lot of women in particular are concerned about, their sex hormones. Men can be as well, decreasing testosterone. And that might be the reason they seek out help. But I want to look deeper because I need to understand what's going on, particularly with your insulin and your cortisol. And if those things are not operating correctly, if we have dysregulated blood sugar throughout the day, or we are overworking, or we're just striving, we're living in a place of codependency, whatever that may be, that's pushing our body to fight or flight, the rest of our hormones are not going to be healthy, and we're not going to really be able to make some good progress with those until we've addressed the foundational hormones. So some of the signs or symptoms that someone might have adrenal fatigue or HPA axis dysfunction, some degree of it. There's degrees, but they might have brain fog, they're forgetting things, neck pain, they're gaining weight around the waist in particular, indigestion or just more digestive symptoms coming up, unexplained hair loss, lightheaded when they're standing up, getting sick more often, constipation, diarrhea, lack of energy, moments of low blood sugar, mood changes, having a hard time regulate their body temperature. They might crave salt, fat, or protein. They feel better after eating. They might feel better on vacation. Apathy, food sensitivities, nervousness, more anxiety, poor stress resilience, especially increased PMS symptoms. All those things could be signs that someone is experiencing a degree of HPA axis dysfunction. And what causes that? Really, it's any stressor on the body. Most of the time, it's multiple that are kind of coming together to create this perfect storm. So diets that are high in sugar and junk food, not helpful. Extreme fasting, or extremely low calorie diets for a period of time. Hypoglycemia, like if you're skipping meals, not eating regularly, poor blood sugar regulation, using stimulants like caffeine and sugar too often, too much alcohol consumption, over exercises or overtraining. And that may not be like ultra marathons. It could just be, a busy dad that has a lot of stress at work and is doing CrossFit 5 times a week and thinks he's doing something really healthy, but he's shortchanging his sleep to get up early to do that class. And in that season of life, it's too much. High toxic burdens, toxin exposure definitely is going to be a stressor on the body. Grief, unhealthy relationships, work environments, an inability to say no, which was me, overbooked schedules, lack of fun, unaddressed trauma, worry, unforgiveness. All these things could be factors. And so those are things I'm, again, taking time to get to know the client to understand what's driving this stress in the body. And here's an example of you can test your saliva cortisol and it will show you what your cortisol is doing throughout the day. You can see the green section on the graph is where your cortisol should sit throughout the day. It should start nice and high when you wake up in the morning and taper off throughout the day. This was my cortisol after my second daughter. And I thought, I was working with a coach at that time. And I thought I just needed better habits to do more. And she was like, let's chat about this. Where do you think your cortisol is? And I said, if it's probably a little off, it's probably peaking during the day because it's in that early stage 1 dysfunction. I'm a little wired and tired and feeling a little stressed or angry at times. And I got my results back and I was like, oh, this is, I've seen quite a few of these working with Dr. Beard, and this is one of the worst I've seen. We're stage 2 approaching stage 3 where we're just burnt out. My body's saying no more. And this was really helpful for me, as it is for many of my clients. This test is $100, $115, but you can't argue with it. And sometimes it's really hard for people to even give themselves permission to say they're stressed and overworked. And so this is a really powerful tool that I will use with clients and just provide them kind of with the education and the clarity of this is what your body is saying. Not what you think it's saying. This is what your body's saying. This is too much. What you're doing is too much. So we need to find some margin. We need to find some rest. A lot of the changes we make here are lifestyle based, but it's going to depend specifically on the client. And I wanted to share mine in particular because for me, yes, there were lifestyle things I could improve on, but I needed emotional health coaching. And I learned quickly, I am not feeling my feelings. I am very codependent at times. And I am reading everyone else's feelings and analyzing before I make a decision. And that was such a burden. My cortisol was showing it. And so that's been a huge part of my healing. And so thankful I'm 5 months postpartum now with number 3, and I have more energy. And I know a lot of that comes from having better boundaries, understanding what I need when I'm starting to feel dysregulated. And for me, the turning point here was understanding that my HPA axis was just very close to being done. And when you get to that stage 3, you're on the couch for at least a couple hours a day. I mean, very much taken out of the game. And we don't want that for ourselves, for our clients, friends, family. So how do we treat HPA axis dysfunction? A lot of this will be lifestyle, like I said, getting that circadian rhythm rebalanced, getting natural sun, time in nature, connection, balancing your blood sugar, eating a healthy diet that's moderate in carbs, getting your sleep, right? That's where a coach comes in and just really helps give that accountability. Coaches with motivational interviewing helps clients kind of take those next steps to do these things and implement them. There's also things we can do, like some supplements that can be helpful for HPA axis, but I don't lean on those solely. You can't just take an adrenal assist supplement and think that you're going to change your cortisol curve. A lot of it really comes with, what do you need in your lifestyle? And a lot of times I'm saying, have you considered a coach or a counselor? Because that could be really helpful for people. And it has been and is for me. I'm noticing we're short on time, so I'm going to give you some just brief examples of how functional medicine has been applied, and then I'll take questions. But this is Selah. This is my second, and this is when she was about 5 months old. And I just pulling up these pictures for me, it was like, man, I remember being in it. She was 5 months old and had eczema. You could see mostly on her trunk. But some days it was so bad. Luckily, she didn't scratch it too much, but being a functional medicine health coach and having a baby with such raging eczema, I was like, what is going on? Um, and it took time. I mean, little babies, especially, their guts are just developing. But at this season, I mean, at this picture, she was exclusively breastfed. So I had to look at my diet, what was going into it. I removed some things for a while. It wasn't working. I finally gave in and removed eggs, which I did not want to have to give up, but that ended up being a huge trigger in that season. But then I show you this later picture because we did figure it out. We were able to use those 5 R's to reset her gut. I never had to use a steroid cream. I used other natural creams to help soothe her. But I didn't want to have to rely on a steroid cream for this. I knew something was driving the inflammation, and I didn't want to just put a cream on it. I wanted to figure out, why is this going on? Because it's not just her skin that's being impacted, even if that's the only thing I can see. And so this is her closer to like age 1, maybe 13 months. And you can see her beautiful porcelain skin underneath the paint there. But that just took time, healing her gut, giving some good probiotics, not being too worried if she was playing in clean dirt, because those good microbes from the dirt were also very helpful for her. And so that was a big win for me. And it took time and it took grit. But I want to share that with you, that I've used it in my own health, used it with my daughter. And I think that can be really helpful, just as an approach. So you're not having to rely on just a cream or just a pill. I've worked with other people, just to kind of give you an idea, 30-year-old female mom of 3, moody, migraines, joint pain, digestive issues, fatigue. Her medical symptom questionnaire, which is a questionnaire I have everyone do with their new client forms, and then I have them redo about every 2 weeks to track, where are your symptoms at? How are we improving? Her score went from a 73 to a 14 over the course of 6 months. And we really worked primarily on gut health and HPA axis dysfunction together. And she got to a place where she learned what her body needed, and she can maintain that on her own, which is great. I'm hoping that I work myself out of a job with my clients. 63-year-old female, hypothyroidism, tired, dry skin, high cholesterol, bloating, irritability, anxiousness, all these things came in. Symptom score, not terrible, but enough that there's multiple things going on. A score of 43 down to a 17 in 3 months. And on our last visit together, I said, okay, what else is lingering that you're kind of hoping to improve? And she's like, actually, I don't have anything that I'm concerned about right now. And I was like, great. I'm here if you need me, but we don't need to book any follow-up at this point. So that's great. And really, any medical symptom questionnaire under 20 is great. It's not always perfect, but under 20, and I'm celebrating. 53-year-old male, bloating, gas, lots of fatigue, joint pain, anxiety, chronic congestion, apathy, weight gain. That's kind of what his story was. His medical symptom questionnaire came in at an 80 and went down to an 18 over the course of a year. Really, I spent 6 months working with him, and then he worked on that, continued to work on those things on his own. But a lot of his improvement happened even in the first month. And that is what's so exciting, is although these can be hard changes, the improvement does come pretty quickly. And that's encouraging for people. With him, we worked a lot on his blood sugar regulation, and that coincided with his weight loss, getting an optimal diet in place, and activities for stress relief. And then for me, like I've mentioned, I had the HPA axis stage 2 dysfunction. At one point, I've had pre-diabetic HbA1c from my stress mostly, but also from not fully understanding what my blood sugar was doing throughout the day. Fatigue, brain fog, just a few resistant pounds that wouldn't come off despite regular exercise and a good diet. And so for me, a huge part of my healing was the emotional and spiritual health coaching, and using a continuous blood glucose monitor, which I also help patients use. It can be really valuable data. Regular gut health practices, optimizing my diet, my protein intake, my calorie intake. And I'm 5 months postpartum. I've got energy, which is really fun, and I'm so thankful for. I do have a good sleeper, which I didn't have with my first 2. So that's a big part of it as well. But I've got clear skin, healthier relationships, and more peace. And so I'm just so thankful for Tin Man, for all you coaches and what you do, and also for the chance to help educate other people in the functional medicine approach and apply that to their own health journey. So to work with me real quick, I recommend clients work with me about every 2 weeks for 3 months. And then we just kind of see if they need more and at what interval. I can be really flexible. So that's just kind of the template I generally recommend. And that allows us time to really put a good protocol in place and work through it, every other week together. We're definitely working on optimizing diet for most people, and maybe doing some sort of elimination reintroduction diet if it's needed. We're working on identifying the major areas of lifestyle that they need improved. And I'm using, just as a lot of you are, motivational interviewing, positive psychology, and I'm helping co-create goals with clients. So that's what kind of an overview of what it looks like working with me. So I'd love for you guys to consider, just as you leave today or you're thinking about this, how would you and or your clients benefit from understanding and implementing the fundamentals of gut health and hormone balance? What is it that you could see? Can you think of a client, or can you think for yourself? Is there a symptom or something going on that's just not optimal? How might these things impact that? And I'm going to skip this part in detail, but just the reminder that having a health coach can be powerful, because sometimes we just need someone to hold our hand through the basics. I don't like to call it that. It's really the fundamentals, because they're not always easy. But just like with Elijah in this story, he wanted to die. And the Lord was like, lay down, take a nap, get up, eat, take a nap, eat. Okay, you're ready. And sometimes people are just grinding so hard, or they're so overwhelmed with all the information out there, they don't know where to start. And the coach can come along and just simplify it, make it easy, motivate them to start taking those steps. And then we really start to see, the strength and capacity and energy come back to people. And that's so fun. So at this time, I would love to take any questions that y'all have. I don't know that
Hannah,
I
can
can.
you see at the bottom of the page the Q&A button?
Let me stop sharing, and then I can, just this getting started page. You can contact me on the Tin Man website, or send me an email at hannah@tinman.life. And I typically do a um, free phone call with people, just if they have more questions, and I can speak directly to what's going on for them. And then typically send them the new client forms, and we book a 1 hour. I am flexible, so if someone's like, I don't know if that setup is going to work for me or whatever, please just give me a call. We can figure out how to make sessions work. So let's see. Yes, I see the Q&As. Can you fully heal and have a healthy gut if you have SIBO? Yes, 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 yes. We work on SIBO all the time. And it's good to think about, there's ways to address SIBO. And then we also want to think about, why did you get SIBO? What was going on that triggered that for you? And so that's, again, part of going like back into that client's history. I've had SIBO, I've been there. So we can absolutely work to address it. Testing or not, you can do quite a few things. And again, those 5 R's that I talked about are really a good path for healing SIBO. And there are specific protocols as well that you can be more aggressive to treating that in particular. For those of you that don't know, that's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Most of your bacteria should be in your large intestine when we talk about your microbiome. And sometimes it sneaks up into the small intestine in a lot of times you see that with chronic bloating. There's other signs as well. How do you know if someone needs to see a functional medicine doctor or with a coach, or if a coach will be sufficient? And do you ever refer people to a doctor? I absolutely refer people to a doctor when it becomes above my pay grade. I think for a lot of people, if they know their diet's not healthy, their gut is not in good shape, they have some stressors they should work on, they're not sleeping well, like if there's some clear things that a coach can help you handle. And again, I can help a lot with gut health, and I can pull in other protocols as well there. that doing those things first helps clear the smoke out of the room, and then we can see what is left standing. And that's when a practitioner is like throwing them a softball, right? That's just lobbing one to them so they can hit it out of the park if more help is needed. For a lot of clients I've worked with, sometimes they just need really that coaching piece. They might see the doctor who then says, work with a coach. This is what's going on. And all they need is ever to see me. Sometimes when we're getting into maybe more sex hormone labs, or or someone has a GI tract that's really a mess, we might need a physician's eyes on that, and some more advanced testing or labs. But for a lot of people, they can do a whole bit with a coach that's trained well and can, again, clear the smoke out of the room, save some money, do the things they know need to be done anyways, and then we can decide if they need a practitioner. Great question. And again, if you have someone in mind, send them my way. And if I think they need a practitioner, I will tell them. Absolutely. And some people can start there, or can start with me, and then I will refer them out. After coming off an antibiotic, what would be the first thing you would do to rebuild your gut? Yeah, I mean, if that's a great question. I think if you're not eating probiotic or fermented foods in your diet, like authentic pickles, dairy, non-dairy yogurt, or other fermented foods like kimchi, then having a probiotic is a good idea. They generally recommend that anyone is getting 1 to 25 billion CFUs of probiotics a day. So if you're not getting that in your diet, you might want to have a probiotic, at least on the days you're not eating those things. And then you're wanting to be thinking about a nice healthy diet with good amounts of fiber. That's going to feed the good bacteria. So, low carb diets have their place, but long term, that actually can starve some of the good bacteria. So we want to make sure you've got some good fiber in there as well. So I would start with that. If you're not doing those things and you're coming off antibiotics, start with those things. What is the spiritual aspect of your coaching? Oh, thank you for asking. Yeah, I think I have clients that come in sometimes that, when it's not coming from Tin Man, I don't know where the spiritual health is. So I kind of wait and I look for the door to kind of ask about where their spiritual health is or how that plays a role. With my Tin Man clients, oftentimes they're kind of bringing that in, and I'm asking maybe where their spiritual health is at, or what spiritual practices they have in place to help with their stress. And so that comes in. And then I am just a few years in. Granted, a couple of those years have been like pretty diligent of emotional health coaching myself. So I'm really only taking people where I've been. If I'm noticing some codependent tendencies, or I'm noticing, there's no boundaries here. Or if I'm, noticing things that I've seen in myself that I've been working on, then I will maybe pose some questions with the client of how are you feeling about this? Or let's talk a little about like what practices you have in place for that. So, and I will pray with clients at times, so that I'll weave that in as it's welcomed. And so I'm not doing, I'm not taking over any of the Tin Man coaches' jobs. I really would rather someone go to them if they need spiritual and emotional health coaching. And I will tell people that if they're coming to see me and they think I can do both, I can do a little bit of, especially as it relates to food, talking about the emotions related to food. We can always tie things back to how we're serving the Lord. But in terms of like the specific coaches, specific spiritual coaching, I want them to see someone else, and I want them to see me primarily for the physical. I have worked with kids. I've worked with, I have clients now that are in their 80s, and I have clients that are young. I've worked with my own girls, obviously. So I'm not working a ton, right? I have 3 girls at home, so I wouldn't say I'm brimming with pediatric clients, but I have worked with kids. Love working with kids. They typically turn around very quickly, which is fun. Their bodies are ready to heal. Let's see. I've got 2 more I'm going to try and answer real quick. What are emotional health indicators in our clients that would incline us to refer them to functional medicine? Yeah, I think I would say if your client is struggling with emotional health, and I would encourage you to ask how it just briefly, how are you sleeping? What's your diet like? How much stress do you have? Um, if they're resistant even to admit their stress, have them come see me and do a cortisol test. And then you guys can look at it together and say, okay, now we really need to address the stress. Because that was helpful for me. But I would ask those preliminary questions because if they're not sleeping great, if they're not eating great, if there's shame attached to those things, like please help them. You can work on the shame. I'll touch on it a little, but let me help them get those fundamentals in place and see how that helps their emotions. That's what I would look for, is just even just in general. How healthy would you say your lifestyle is? And let them talk. Those might be some things to ask. And then if you feel like, oh yeah, they notice there's some improvement, you could say, we do have Hannah, you could look into what she does. I have also done a podcast with Jeff Schulte they could listen to kind of get an idea of what I do.